So as our panelists are well aware, and probably many of you who are here as well, know that transit ridership in Los Angeles County and actually throughout the United States is down. Here in LA, ridership fell in 2016 by over 6%. There are lots of causes, or potential causes for this. Maybe the Great Recession, the decline of immigration, displacement of low-income residents in gentrifying neighborhoods, perhaps the 2015 California law allowing undocumented residents to get driver's licenses. Also declining gas prices and LA traffic congestion that slows down bus service. So there's a lot of reasons. Another possible reason and a likely cause is fare increases. In 2010 and 2014, LA Metro implemented a new fare structure that included a fare increase. This resulted in a direct impact on ridership among the 80% of the Metro riders who are low income. 27% of those are below the poverty line. So now Metro, of course, has realized that this is a very serious problem and increasingly serious, and they're working hard to pinpoint the reasons for the decline while promising the voters that they will provide programs for seniors, for people with disabilities, for students, so that they can provide the service that was promised, but also have high quality service and maintain the programs and keeping the fares low. So will that work? That's going to be our discussion for today. So how do we panelists address the decline in ridership? How do we address the mobility needs of the students, seniors, people with disabilities, and expand our active transportation and first mile, last mile infrastructure? And how do we innovate with ideas such as microtransit and make full use of the investments that we have from Measure R and Measure M? And how do we cut short-term congestion, which we all know is a really big problem? So that's where we begin.
All right, excellent. Thank you everybody for being here. And come on up front, there's a couple lovely seats right here next to Susan, if you're way in the back. No? No takers? Oh, there we go. I see a couple people coming. All right, we've got a big panel up here. We've got some amazing people. We're going to keep this fast moving. So let's just jump right into it. And the way we're going to do this is I'm going to go through and ask everyone an individual question. They'll give their response. And then we're going to have a question from the audience. So if you think of some great questions, we're going to have a roving mic that's going to come around, so be the first one up. We'll probably have time for one question, and then we're going to go into a discussion. And we're focused here on bold ideas to address, to really see where we take Measure M and Measure R and all these great opportunities that we have. What do we do with them? How do we really make the mobility future for Los Angeles? So, all right, let's start. How about we start with you, Lillibeth? Does that work? Yeah, or do you want a moment? Okay, cool. So Lillibeth Navarro is from Communities Actively Living Independent and Free. It's one of the most important organizations serving and advocating on behalf of people with disabilities in LA County. Key feature of Measure M. So the community of people with disabilities have had some great successes ensuring full accessibility in our communities. What is your goal with respect to the implementation of Measure M, and are you satisfied so far with the progress?
We want the...
There we go.
The Americans with Disabilities Act assures our access to transportation, and we, as a community, have that as our goal, working with all the agencies and the transit movement. So one of our goals is to look at our systems of paratransit and the bus system and see that they work well, especially in the area of ride sharing. When you call access and you share ride with others, they say, and sometimes people with disabilities have to wait and sit for a long time before they get to their appointments. The notion of share riding, as defined by paratransit, has to expand by working with a bus system, because I think that's where the connection needs to happen. If it takes me 2 hours to get to my doctor's appointment, I need to know what other options are. Because actually transit for people with disabilities, like for all of you, should be a matter of options. You have the option to drive a car, take a taxi, take the train. We don't have those many options. But if we work on transit together, those options will open up.
Great. That's absolutely right. Alternatives and options. And I think you got a great point. And it's the same issue with the senior community as well. So I'll kick it over to Luis from AARP. You may have heard of this organization. They have 37 million members nationwide and played a leadership role in Measure M because of the critical importance of transportation for older adults. So Luis, it was a big deal for AARP to join the Measure M coalition, and you guys put a lot into it. What does AARP see as its priorities now with respect to the implementation of Measure M, and how will you work to secure those goals?
Great, thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here. Yes, it was a big deal for AARP to support this initiative. In fact, it was the first time AARP in California had supported a local ballot initiative. And as mentioned, we have over 38 million members across the country, 3.3 members here in California. And some of them are working, some of them are retired, some of them are on fixed incomes. So we did not approach the decision around potentially increasing their financial burden lightly. But what we determined was that with Measure M, there was a clear and accountable return on investments for our members and for people who are 50 and older. We also were compelled by the coalition represented on this table today and also in this room that really demonstrated the desire of LA residents, LA County residents, to really transform the way that they got around the county and the city as well. And we really, when we came into this campaign, we promised our members that we would continue to be involved and that we would help them find ways to participate and inform the decision-making process as the planning continues, as projects are implemented. And really for AARP, the work around transportation is tied to our overarching goal, framework here in California, which is really building communities, livable communities for all ages. And that means that we have a transportation system that really connects people of all incomes to their jobs, to important support services that helps people make sure that they get to their medical appointments and non-medical appointments, making sure that it allows all of us to have the social interactions that keep us healthy as we age, as well as that we have safe streets and safe sidewalks where we can walk, bike, we can push a stroller, or we can push a walker. So really looking at Measure M as a vital way to get to advance that livable communities for all ages goal. And also, more importantly, the population in LA County is not only growing, it's also getting older. So by 2030, we expect the number of people who are 50, 65 and older to double. So that means that we need to, as a society, as a county, we need to be prepared to meet their needs. And part of what AARP is doing, and going into your question about our priorities, is really highlighting the diverse mobility needs of people who are older. So certainly we have people who are 50 and older who are taking the bus, walking, riding their bikes, etc. We also have older adults who have specialized transportation needs, and that's why we are working closely with a lot of the coalition members to make sure that those needs are taken into place as well. And like I said, we really want to make sure that people, our members in our constituency, are engaged in this process. And then lastly, what we're doing is we're celebrating the passage of Measure M throughout this month. So we are actually, there's some information outside. A part of the events that we're going to have, we're going to help our members, invite our members to take a tour with us on the Red Line, to learn how to ride a bike, to really get comfortable with the system, to see like, hey, this is where your money's going, start taking advantage of it. But more importantly, it's been a pleasure to work with a lot of the coalition members on this table and also in this room. And we really look forward to continuing to work with you all as these funds get deployed.
Awesome. And, you know, I think something that you point out is coalitions. And, you know, I have young kids, but there's this corner near where I live, 2 blocks where I live, where there isn't a ADA compliant curb cut, right? And I'm pushing them on the stroller, and I have to go into the street to actually get them around that curve. But that's not just an issue for parents, an issue for Lillibeth's group, it's an issue for AARP. So we've got these shared goals here where we have to work together because we can achieve things, we can achieve more together than we can separately. Great. So now I'm going to head over down the line to Devin. So Devin Deming is the director of Metro's commute services, and she's really been awesome. We've been working, Move LA, and taking a leadership role in reducing transit costs for students and commuters countywide. And this is a really great, fantastic program, something that didn't start with Measure M, but Measure M helped with the funding. So the question is, how does the current Metro Student Transit Pass program work? And what can be improved, and what big opportunities is Metro looking at to expand its commuter rider program for students and others?
So the existing program is a reduced fare college vocational ID that students actually have to apply for and receive in the mail and then load that card on their own. The new program, which you're referring to that we've been working on, is the UPass program, the Universal Fare Program for college students. That program is about 1 year in. That program, we're partnering with colleges, universities, even trade and technical vocational schools throughout the county to provide stickers with the tap chip inside them that go actually on the student's ID. They don't have to go anywhere to apply. They don't have to wait to get it in the mail. They can literally go to their campus bookstore or the office that's distributing these stickers on campus, pay the portion that they're required to pay based on their school, because some of the schools are subsidizing these passes, and then they can literally get that sticker, walk off campus, board a bus or a train. So we just wrapped year 1 of that program. In year 1, we had over 2 million student boardings under that program. And if you look at where we were before, a year ago, we had about 7,000 students countywide participating in the College Vocational Reduced Fare ID program. Right now, we're tracking just in the UPass program at a 60% increase in participation year over year. And through now in that program, we've sold over 28,000 passes. So that's just in the first year. We've expanded from 4 schools to 12 schools. We launched our 12th school in fall. We'll be up to 15 schools in spring. And the students love the program. The administration loves the program. And the really telling thing about ridership is that in areas, we heard earlier that ridership was down 6% in 2016. If you just look at bus ridership, it was actually down 12%. But in the areas where there are UPass schools, for instance, Cal State Northridge, the ridership stayed flat. There was no reduction in ridership around that school, and they only have bus service. So, you know, you could look at it as, well, ridership didn't increase, but it also didn't decrease 12%, and that's a pretty big deal. So we're really happy with the way the program is going. And Measure M, 2% of Measure M was dedicated to students, seniors, and disabled, and that money is going to the students who need it most through the new low-income program that's going to start in January.
That's awesome. And there's almost 1 million students in LA County. Can you guys believe that? That's a lot of people. Anyone go to school in LA County? Awesome.
I think there's actually 1.4 million public school students, and that doesn't count private schools. So probably there's more like 3 million.
Okay,
I guess.
so I was wrong. And I'm in a divided household. My wife and I went to USC. My daughter goes to UCLA at the preschool there. So, you know, it's a problem. It's a problem. But actually, hey, guess what, guys? And I promise I will get to, I haven't forgotten about you guys. I'll get to you guys soon. Guess what? We've got a student on this panel. Isn't that awesome? Now, and this is key because we've been working, we worked this year to try to pass AB 17, which was sponsored by Assemblyman Holden, which would have created a student transit pass program throughout the state. Now, it got all the way through the legislature, and at the 11th hour, the governor decided to veto it. But he left the door open. He said he's really interested in seeing different models and working with us to get it right on the Student Transit Pass program. And I know Devin is working really hard to prove that the model works and that, as you said, ridership, we can keep ridership level and hopefully even increase it. So, Gezel, you're a student at Valley College. You were with Student Senate for community colleges. You were active in the campaign for Measure M and AB 17 for Universal Student Transit Pass program that might be implemented. And I'll explain in a second what we mean by Universal Student Transit Pass. But I want to know, how is it coming along now as best you see it?
At this given point, there's still conversations in respect to implementation in every single respective college, and the biggest part about that is that a lot of the student advocates really need to kind of take the mantle here now that a lot of the MOUs in these respective districts have started to be implemented. For example, LACCD with the Metro Board, and to see how these new policies are being rolled out. Say, for example, in LACC. Which Los Angeles City College, which is going to be, I think, our first community college that's going to be affected by the MOU. Sorry, LA Trade Tech, I deeply apologize. So, and then repurposing that policy on to every other community college within the district, and also to repurpose those policies in other districts overall. And so the momentum's already there, though. I mean, over 300,000 students in LA alone voted for Measure M, and over 2 million throughout California were motivated by actually voting for Measure M as well, because the biggest thing about students right now is that they're dealing with all kinds of different non-tuition costs. Over half of California students at this moment are dealing with some form of food insecurity. That's from the Wisconsin Hope Lab's new numbers in respect to their issues. And along with that, over 10% of these California community college students are actually dealing with some form of homelessness or housing insecurity. So there is this desire to reduce non-tuition costs altogether. The culture's already there, and we have the momentum. Now we just need to seize it in order to really put pressure on the process, on every single respective administration, so that they know that these are the issues that we're dealing with as students. And I mean, we're starting to do that. Along with that, once we actually have those policies secured in each respective college, from there we continue to advocate on the California State Legislature to continue to reduce those costs overall, as we've seen with AB 17 and AB 2222 in the past. But overall, like, even here in Los Angeles, I could tell you, the amount of opportunities that are available to us, and that I've had the opportunity to actually find, which allows me to actually sit on this board today, this panel, sorry, I want to actually provide that for every single student in Los Angeles. I want to provide that for every single student in California, because the amount of opportunities you're able to have with public transit, I owe everything that I have to actually being able to be mobile. I don't have a car. A lot of students don't have cars. A lot of students have to rely on getting by on buses, and the amount of costs that are raised on them tends to reduce, as we've talked about, it tends to reduce ridership. So trying to push for these discounts is much bigger than just allowing us access to them. It's allowing us access to opportunities. More opportunities than we could even fathom in the face of how much we have in California alone. And I'll leave it at
Awesome.
that. Thank you.
Thank you. And he took the bus here today. Who else took the bus today? Awesome. Wow, I love this room. I love this room. Well, Gezel was talking about the administration and finding administration partners. And guess what? We have an administration person here at the table. Who would have thought that that was a good idea? Maybe us. No, we have President Larry Frank here from LA Trade Tech College. And he's been a transit advocate for many, many years to benefit the almost 14,000 enrolled students at Trade Tech. I hope I got that number right. And we're actually partners with Trade Tech on Slate Z, which is the South Los Angeles Transit Empowerment Zone, a federal promise zone. And so we're working with them. We're thinking, how can we get Gezel's bold vision of every single student in LA County, all 1.4 students, to get a student transit pass? And we think we can have something piloted at LA Trade Tech. So I guess the question for Larry is, what are the challenges facing students at Trade Tech in terms of transportation to and from school and to and from work? And what is this Slate Z, and what is it trying to solve?
All right. Good morning, everybody. Larry Frank over at Trade Tech. Hey. Yeah, I've been president there since 2013. I was in the mayor's office before that, and was always a big believer in transit as a key, solver for so many of our issues in Los Angeles. Trade Tech, I end up there, and there's 2 rail lines, 8 bus lines, 2 dash lines. If this isn't a place where you can actually, incubate some really great work. And so I looked at the reduced fare card for college students. I said, well, there's the problem. It's only available to full-time students, and only 20% of our students are full-time. So we started talking to Metro, and Metro, it only took them a year, and they knocked it down first to 8 units, then down to 6 units. So Metro has been a spectacular partner, step by step. And that didn't seem to, do it truly. Devin, give me public props right here. So they said, well, so the next issue was you have to, for college students at that time, you either had to go to 2 locations to get the card, or you had to do it by mail. And it just didn't seem, I don't know if my students even know what stamps are, to be honest, right? So it just wasn't seemingly work. So what they put in place with the UPass, they give an RFID tag that we put on the back of our student ID cards. We sell it at our bookstore, and we're able to provide that, including we front load it out of people's financial aid. We provide it out of our EOPS programs, Emoja, et cetera. And we thought that's going to penetrate, and that'll be, how we actually get what are actually our 23,000 students at Trade Tech connected up to the transit system. The community colleges in California, in the LA County, there's over 450,000 community college students in the county of Los Angeles, just in Los Angeles alone. So there's a way we can sort of make some impact. And what I'm here to say is we haven't figured it out. And it's really a frustrating experience at Trade Tech, because Metro has done everything we've asked them to do. And so the next step in the process is we are going to do a survey that we're going to drive into all of our classes. We're giving out 10, semester-long UPasses in order to kind of, get people to respond to this survey. And we're going to try to use data to sort of truly drive it. But it's a very frustrating experience. My instinct is that when I talk to students, they literally cannot pull the amount of money out of their pocket to do in advance, even though it's 60% cheaper than to do it fare by fare, because it's, as we found out in a recent survey of the whole LA Community College District, 60% of our students struggle between paying their bills and their food, and 20% of our students admit that they have been, in fact, without housing in the previous year. But that still doesn't explain it all, but we're struggling to get to the bottom of it. Slate Z. So I just want to say a quick plug. Our Effie Turnbull Sanders, Michael Huff are here in the room from Slate Z. Say hello to them. Eli is actually our co-chair of our transit working group, along with Therese McMillan, who's an amazing leader in Metro as well, working specifically on UPass and working specifically on first mile, last mile in South Los Angeles. I think we have some great pieces of work. We're working as a junior co-applicant on the active transportation corridor along Slauson Avenue that's going to allow us to get closer to the coming Fairview Heights station on the Crenshaw line for people in South Los Angeles, as well as the Blue Line. We have a lot of ideas, but my one big idea is that I would love, Devin, I will put money, I will put student workers on it, I will get into every classroom for the survey, and I'm going to see what we can do to do better, given the resources that are in place, and given the kind of partner that you have been.
Well, you heard it here, and I know Devin wanted to kind of respond there. So.
Hello? Oh, okay. So one thing that I really, really want to commend LA Trade Tech for, they are the only one out of the 12 participating schools right now that allows students to add the cost of the UPass to their student bill for the semester. That allows students to pay at their own pace. That's really visionary. It's a huge improvement in the way students can access their transit payments. And I just want to thank you guys for being such a great partner as well.
Awesome. And just so you know, I mean, if you have to pay for the semester, it's nearly $200, which for a low-income student, that's a significant chunk of change, right? I remember when I was in college, one of those big trays of ramen noodles was like, what, $25, right? What we think, and we love this program, but we actually think, we call this Model 1, but we actually think that there's a Model 2, and we've seen this around the country, where every student on a campus is automatically provided a transit pass. It's included on their bill as part of their fees, and we've seen dramatic increases in ridership with this model, 20, 30%. And so we're hoping, we're working with Metro, we're working with Trade Tech, we're hoping and we're looking, if you're a funder and think this is a cool idea out there, this is something we'd really love to partner on, because we think, think about it. If we did 20 or even just 10% of those 1.4 million students, right, that's about 150,000 students with a transit pass. That's the projected daily ridership of the red line when it opens, or the purple line, the purple line when it opens to Westwood, which with a fraction of that capital cost investment. Right? What would that do for ridership? I mean, that's like steroids right into the vein of ridership. So we think we've got something really cool here, and we're excited to be partnering with Metro. All right, so let's move on to our folks in active transit. You guys still here? You guys still active? Awesome. Well, let's talk with Amanda, who came all the way from our sister city up north, and we love them now because we're not playing them in the World Series, or we weren't playing them previously. She's from NRDC, and she's known as one of the preeminent environmental advocacy, or the preeminent environmental advocacy organization in the country. And we worked together. She took a Metro link, and then you hopped on a Metro bike, right? How was that?
That was awesome.
Pretty cool. We planned it all out yesterday. It was a lot of fun. So no doubt you see Measure M and LA County's efforts in terms of how model programs that encourage people to get out of their cars and use transit, bikes, or walk instead. What would you and NRDC think is a promising opportunity that we might not have thought of ourselves yet to try out?
Great, and we're going to throw up the slides, right?
Yep. Neil, slide 7.
Okay, great. So the big, bold idea that NRDC has been working on in partnership with SCAG through the 100 Hours campaign, which is a nod to the fact that Angelinos spend 104 hours a year stuck in traffic. The big idea we've been working on is called a GO zone, and that is in the next slide. And the idea of the GO zone is really to stack up, to take everything we know how to do, all the best practices from around the world, and stack up all these transportation solutions in one traffic hotspot, and see if we can't tackle some of that congestion that we heard about from the previous speaker. So what's kind of new and innovative about the GO zone is that it focuses both on the supply side of the equation and the demand side. So as I see it, we've been putting a lot of effort into the supply side of things. Measure R, Measure M, these are amazing, amazing victories, and around the world people are fascinated and very impressed with what Los Angeles is doing on the transit side. Jessica's been leading a lot of the work on creating safe, protected bike lanes, better crosswalks, better sidewalks, making sure active transportation is a real, comfortable, safe, pleasant option for getting around. So that's the supply side. Also, I think we're going to hear from Joshua Schenk later about more new innovative mobility options, on-demand choices. For those for whom not everybody can get to a transit station. Transit doesn't cover absolutely every trip you want to take, but maybe by putting in place on-demand ride sharing and microtransit, we can fill in some of those gaps in the transit system. So that's on the sort of supply side. We also talk about introducing what's called a decongestion fee, and that is a peak period charge to drive in the traffic hotspot as a way of managing that limited finite supply of road space and putting a price on the decision to drive at the peak period so that we can manage that limited resource so that when you need to drive, you can get there. And it's not a maddening, frustrating solution. We can make traffic actually work better. Now, these kinds of programs, these go zones, have been implemented around the world, in London, in Stockholm, in Milan, and Singapore, and they are very, very popular. The London-Stockholm programs get over a 70% public approval rating. I'm not going to say they're not controversial, and I'm not going to say people weren't skeptical about them at first, but they actually work. And here's the statistic that made me so excited about this, okay? Before they implemented this in Stockholm, and it's about a little less than a $4 charge, $3.80. Before they implemented, they had this opportunity to do this kind of scientific experiment. So for 6 months, they just ramped up the transit system. They almost doubled the size of their transit system. Massive investment, new transit, new buses, new rail, and they sat back and they watched what happened to traffic. Does anybody have a guess what happened to traffic? Nothing changed with traffic, right? Zero change. And I thought, that is so depressing. I can't believe that all that transit investment made no difference in traffic. And then 6 months later, when they implemented the charge, which is, again, less than like a cup of coffee at Starbucks, $4, they saw 30 to 50% reduction in wait times. 30 to 50% reduction in the amount of time you had to sit stuck in traffic, just because of that modest charge. And they saw a 20% reduction in the number of cars driving into the city. This is literally overnight. I don't have the slide here, but there's an unbelievable slide that shows kind of the main freeway into downtown, the day before, stuck in traffic, the day after, lightly scattered with cars, like free-flowing traffic. And it's kind of like, can we do this overnight? It seems that we actually can do this overnight. And I see it as very much in complement with the transit, because guess what happened? Yeah. Those 20% of people who didn't drive anymore got onto the transit. And they got that bump up in transit ridership that Marlene talked about. We've been seeing declining transit ridership. And so I see this as just really, we need to look at iteratively supply side and demand side solutions. And this is really how we're going to get LA moving again. So I really want to talk to you all about how we can make this happen, how we can make it happen in a way that's equitable and achieves a lot of our other co-benefits of better air quality and better climate change.
Well, let's take advantage of her, because she came down from San Francisco. She'll be here for a little bit. So if you have more questions about go zones, and by the way, I used to live in I was a student in London many years ago. I know I look pretty young, but and I was always surprised when I had like a 9 o'clock class, and I'm like walking to class at 8:30, or more like 9:05 because I was always late. But I was like, where are all the cars? It's 8:30. Isn't this rush hour? And I was amazed because they had implemented a go zone, and people literally were just not driving because it was too expensive. They were taking transit. So an interesting idea. We got some more interesting ideas. I'd love to hear from Jessica now from Investing in Place, who's committed to transportation investments to strengthen communities. And I know we've been implementing some of these more walkable, bike ped infrastructures, first mile, last mile infrastructures, bike lanes, stuff like that. So I guess, how is that going? How is Measure M going? Are we having any challenges with that in the city, or is it going pretty smoothly?
Well, we did just start collecting Measure M 6 months ago, I guess in July. So I think it's still really early to tell too much. But I just want to talk about the student passes for just a second. It's so fascinating to me to hear that CSUN, I think they've had incredible enrollment in the U-passes, in contrast to LA Trade Tech, where the students are really struggling just to meet their basic needs. So I think when I think about implementation, this idea of starting to acknowledge the vast difference in resources and transportation options we have in this region, and starting to build in for that. And the U-Pass program is so rad to hear about how students access school. And shout out to our friend Kenny in the front row, who's one of our best transit riders, who goes to Glendale High School. but how do we also begin to expand the UPass program with our K through 12 students too? Our real bus riders out there are typically students, moms, and older adults. And some of the best stuff in Measure M that I'm fired up about, that I really think we need tremendous support on implementation is, I was really proud that our Metro board dedicated so much money to bus operations. That means we can do frequent buses. When I ride the bus and I have 15-minute headways at rush hour for a rapid bus, it's maddening to me. Measure M gives us the chance to change that. I also am a big Dodger fan, go blue, and tonight when I try to go home on the bus, it's awesome because there's a dedicated bus lane. And that was a private-public partnership a little bit with Metro money, some of that clean air money, but we have put money in Measure M for dedicated bus lanes, for student passes, but where we're struggling is ownership in this region for leadership on implementation. We have a lot of bold leaders, but regrettably we don't have enough of them. We've built a really innovative Measure M expenditure plan, but I worry that we're not doing enough. I don't know what the magic bullet is, but community engagement or something that really encourages our region to feel connected to the solution, that we didn't just vote for this tax to get somebody else on the bus, but we're all willing to make personal changes too. And then I think I'm excited about your next panel about housing, because while I've been lucky enough to not have a car for a really long time in LA, I've also been lucky enough to live almost always about 4 or 5 miles from where I work. I don't think it's a reasonable ask if people keep getting displaced due to housing costs, as transit really starts to fail a lot of us. Because real talk is, I think the average bus speed right now is 8 to 9 miles an hour. So if you live 10 miles from where you work or go to school, you're automatically looking at an hour-long bus ride, plus if you have a 15-minute walk on each side. And so I think that's where the struggle is, of like implementation, community engagement that feel connected to these solutions, and we're not just putting all these bold ideas because we're so smart and we're the technicians, but are we cultivating the leadership that will have our elected officials back to actually change our roads and our streets?
Awesome. And my family actually got rid of our second car. We have a couple kids, so we have one car last year, and I kind of revel in trying to figure out how to get places. And I go over all over the city for some of my business, and it's like, okay, how do I get from here downtown to Pacoima? That's fun. And one of the reasons I thought, hey, I can get rid of the second car is because of Ciclavia. And so really an inspirational thing that happens in LA almost once a month. I know you're working towards that. They've had over 1 million participants and have helped to bring the county together in an unprecedented way, turning the streets over to people. So Ramel is the executive director. So bike advocates, my question for you, have said that when you add up all the different categories, there's 6 to 8% of Measure M funding spent for bike and pedestrian infrastructure. So are you guys optimistic about the future efforts with Metro to create this robust cycle network through LA County, or is it kind of too soon to tell?
I think it's a combination of both. You know, yes, we're optimistic. How can you not be optimistic when you have such an unprecedented support in the county for such a measure? You know, first we got to start there, right? You got to start with the fact that, you know, folks are looking at this measure in ways in which almost reframes the way we're looking at transit. You know, we're looking at transit obviously as a mobility issue, but I want to go back to what Gezel said, which is, you know, mobility gives you opportunity. So if you think about it in those types of ways, you don't pit those that are, you know, just rail versus train versus bike versus, you know, it's not that, it's a totality of everything. And if you're asking me, am I optimistic? Yeah. I love LA. We love LA. We love the county. And so you think about, if there's any one thing that Ciclavia has taught us, or at least shows us in very real ways, is that, you know, you should listen when you're on Ciclavia. Don't just look around. Listen to what people are saying. You know, what you get more from what the conversations are. And these are random conversations. You know, if you're on a 6 to 8 mile stretch with 100,000 people, and it's not crowded, it's just stretched along, and they're talking about how cool it is. Isn't our city cool? Isn't our county cool? I don't see folks in traffic saying that, right? You don't have that kind of conversation. And so, again, when you think about, am I optimistic? Heck yeah, we have to be. Because, you know, LA is too important of a city to the folks who live here and for the folks who depend on it and the global scale in which, we sit. We're a city that literally is an economic engine for the entire country, and we've got to be able to make it work. And we're also a young city. You think about it, we're a city that says, globalization's happening, climate change is happening, the world's cities are becoming wider, meaning like they're broader in scale. They're not tall. And the challenges are that they have to look to cities who's been able to address these issues of sustainability over time. They're not looking to New York's. They're not looking to London's. They're not looking to even San Francisco. They're going to be looking to LA, who's 500 square miles of space as a city, and we're still able to operate in a quite sustainable way if you think about it. So we're this model, and for us to begin to actually own that, is an important thing. And, Ciclavia just tells me that, when they first came to me, I served as deputy mayor with Larry in the previous administration, and, they said, we're going to shut down the streets and no cars. I'm like, are you kidding me? I mean, one can't sleep the night before because you don't know what to expect. And, what it tells us is that there's an appetite. And the appetite is not, I'm going to jump on a bike and I'm going to ride around. The appetite is not, I'm going to go walk around my city. The appetite is, I'm going to experience my city in a different way. And that's how cities are defined, is by these experiences. So if we listen to what Gezel's saying about mobility is an opportunity creates experiences, and you just keep on following that kind of logic, I can't help but just be optimistic.
Awesome. I love it. Yeah. And I happened to go to the first Ciclavia, and I was like, yeah, I'm just going to have the street to myself. No one's going to be here. And it was just like this panel, right? I was like, oh, man, no one's going to show up. And then you guys all showed up, and you're all here together. And it was great. And this is great. So, I once worked at a place that had a director of first impressions, and I was like, boy, that is a cool title. But today, on today's panel, we have Joshua Shank, who is the director of the Office of Extraordinary Innovations. Now, that is a cool title. And they're taking the lead on some exciting projects. So, first off, what the heck is the mission of the Office of Extraordinary Innovations? And, we've heard from students, we've heard from persons with disabilities, we've heard from the senior community, the active transit community. What innovations, what bold ideas are you bringing to the table to the folks here at this table?
Well, I guess I wouldn't.
We'll do a question from the audience right after this. Sorry.
I wouldn't live up to the title's name if I didn't immediately start by questioning the goal of this session, and let me explain why. We are in charge of the Metro Strategic Plan, which Metro has not had in some time. It's going to be a 10-year plan that guides the agency and figures out what we actually want to be when we grow up, what we want to do over the next 10 years. What should the goal of that plan? Should the goal of that plan be to increase ridership on LA Metro? I would argue no, that it should not be to increase ridership on LA Metro. Now, let me explain. Okay. If you think about what our goal is and why people gave us 71% of the vote, it was not because they want to see more people ride transit. It was because they want to be able to get where they're going more effectively, more efficiently. They want better mobility. And the route to better mobility is not to stay along the same route you've been on just because that's what you do. And what we do is we provide buses and trains. But if you want to get more people where they want to go effectively, you have to actually get fewer people driving by themselves. That's really what your goal is, right? Because everybody who drives by themselves takes up a lot of space and investment and goes, as Amanda points out, for free, all over the place, taking out space that we all need. And then they park their car in a space that we need. So a lot of the real challenge is not getting more transit ridership, it's getting more people out of single occupancy vehicles, and we do that in so many different ways, and I've been so inspired by hearing all the different ways that we are doing that on this panel, with Amanda and Jessica talking about the way that they're thinking about it, and thinking about how we're doing it for people with disabilities, how we're doing it for students. All these groups are a part of how we get people out of single occupancy vehicles. Let me tell you about a few of our initiatives that we've got going on to do that. One, Measure M is great, but it's going to take 40 years. So we're working with the private sector to figure out how to accelerate some of those Measure M projects and deliver them faster through innovative financing, right? So that's one strategy. Number two, People are out on the street now able to, for sometimes less than $1, hail a vehicle that will pick them up and take them to where they want to go within a matter of minutes. We can't just sit there and let that happen. We can't just say, well, that's happening, and so let's hope people ride our buses and wait on the street for half an hour by a sign and hope that a bus shows up to take them to another bus that maybe will show. I mean, we can't do that. So we've got a couple of initiatives that are attempting to see, well, what can we do in terms of new mobility solutions? We're looking at Microtransit, which is dynamic point-to-point shared services. We're looking at partnering with existing transportation network companies to get people to and from our stations. Those companies are not accessible to everybody. They're not accessible to people with disabilities. They're not accessible to low-income people. They're not accessible to people without smartphones. And they're not accessible to people without bank accounts. All of those people are our core riders. So getting those people to be able to use new mobility services to get to and from our stations, yes, it might increase ridership, but mostly the point is to get more people out of single occupancy vehicles. And then finally, with the strategic plan itself, because the strategic plan is a really exciting initiative that all of you should be a part of. You should look for it when it comes out early next year in draft form and send it in your comments, because what the strategic plan does is it says, okay, we got Measure M, that's great, and that's something we're doing, but how about absolutely everything else we need to be doing to achieve our goals, because Measure M is clearly not sufficient to do that. And that's what we've heard today about all the other things that we need to be doing and the strategic initiatives that come out of the strategic plan, which include things like pricing our roadway network, making sure we have exclusive lanes for buses, improving bike accessibility, and making sure people have access to those things. All of those concepts are strategic initiatives that Metro has to undertake. And you have a role in helping us figure out which ones are the priorities. Because really when it comes down to innovation and extraordinary innovation, it's all about setting priorities. That's really all it is. And saying, we're going to do the things that are most cost-effective in getting towards greater mobility for Los Angeles.
Awesome. That was pretty cool. So we're going to take a question now. So who has the microphone? Who's on mic duty? Can we turn up the lights, actually? I have a question. Is there a light man or gal? I have a question for the folks here. Who did not take a single occupancy vehicle to this conference today? And I'll include people who rode together. So let's see. That's pretty awesome. I mean, that's more than like that's like 75% there, guys. That's pretty awesome. I guess it's the right audience, huh? Okay, I think Danny has the mic, and so I think we've got two questions right here in the middle. We're going to take those two questions together and open it up to the panel, and I think that's about all we have time for today, so. Okay, three. So let's hear all three questions together and make it short, 30 seconds.
Hello, I'm Daniel Garcia, Houston advocate from Goliath. And my question for the panel is, I want to know who will be supporting the idea of having density with the density with the idea of with affordable and accessible housing. Because affordable and accessible housing is not addressing here. As far as the combination of transit area should be combined with affordable and accessible housing. I want to hear more about affordable and accessible housing, which combining with the public transit and market area, where people can actually make the effort.
So I hope you're sticking around for the next panel, because that's exactly the topic we're going to discuss at the next panel, is affordable access to housing near transit. So great question. I would hold it for the next one. So there's a woman with a striped shirt right there. There's a gentleman up here. So let's get their questions together, and I think that's all we have time for.
Thank you. Susanna Schick from gas2.org. Ramel, how can you have hope while bike lanes are being destroyed on Venice Avenue and other parts of LA while we try to implement Vision Zero and then get pushed back? Like, we need to just push back against people who want everything the way it's always been.
Yeah, I think we should keep on. I think we push back hard. And here's why. Part of my kind of thinking around this is that, you know, there's a, I got to feel like sometimes as drivers and folks who drive cars, we feel very entitled, that this is supposed to be ours, you know, and whatever the it is and whatever the inconvenience may be, I think whatever's going on throughout one's day kind of gets encapsulated with that frustration that you have when you're in traffic. It doesn't really matter whether or not it's traffic that's frustrating you, it might be everything else, and I think it gets all tied in, and when you see road diets that are occurring, you know, and that kind of conversation that it must be the roads diet's fault because we have Trump. You know, it's like you're almost trying to pit it against something, and I sit here and I just say, just as such a, you know, that's such a wrong kind of conversation to have. You know, the conversation should be around, you know, what's it improving? Does it take time to improve? Remember, roads didn't happen just overnight when we built freeways. You know, it's like you gotta begin to own what it is that is occurring. What's occurring is this kind of reclaiming of a sense of community, which we all want. Mm-hmm. You know, it's just that folks are not in my backyard or yes, in my backyard. I feel like that conversation is one where, you know, when you realize it's a 20-second kind of inconvenience if there is a number associated with how long it takes you to go from point A to point B.
Yep. Thank you. And I think Amanda wanted to
respond to this too, because I think there really is an interconnection between what Joshua spoke about managing the supply, managing that road network, and our ability to deliver these Vision Zero safety improvements and the bus-only lanes that Jessica said, make your bus a faster, more appealing option. The folks at Transport for London had a very ambitious street redesign campaign. They wanted to put in a lot of protected bike lanes, bus-only lanes, but the traffic was so bad that they knew they would have a revolution on their hands if they tried to put those in with all that traffic. Does that sound familiar to anybody? Right? So then they implemented the charge. A 20% sustained drop in traffic equated to 90,000 fewer cars in London, which meant there was a little bit more space on the road. There was a little bit more opportunity to be flexible. And they've been able to then implement a very ambitious street redesign campaign of bus lanes, bike lanes, pedestrianizations, cutting, to Ramel's point, closing off entire areas to pedestrians permanently, not just on ciclovia days, because of those fewer cars in the city. So I think people are just so angry, they're so frustrated that they can't even stomach the idea that things might even get a little bit worse. And unless we solve that larger traffic solution, I think we're going to keep having trouble with these street redesigns.
Awesome. We've got a question here, and then I think we've got to close out our panel for the next one. So.
Hi, gang. I'm Peter Godfroy. I have a Dragonfly graphic design company, and I wanted to not come here and complain to you guys, but to thank you. I was in a very severe accident almost 3 years ago, and I missed 2.5 years of work, going to therapies and just not being eligible to drive because I had bad vision and a head injury. But because of the relationship with many of the Metro, I was able to keep my independence and my dignity, and now I'm back to work full time. So I want to thank you for having me.
Awesome. That's fantastic.
Well, it's really cool.
And, you know,
Josh, Josh, I can tell you things that I discovered the hard way. That wasn't just a choice, but I'm so glad that I had so many of these things to fall into. And I can testify a lot. And I want to ask one quick question, though. As we're talking world, cities around the world, I think we got to put the pressure on our Southern California with the weather. We don't have the rain or the cold. If we can't get this transportation working, then we just don't deserve to be part of the conversation. That's it. That's my question. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, Lillibeth, did you want to?
Yeah. I'm so lucky I'm sitting next to Joshua here. But I was in a hurry this morning, so I wanted to make a point, though. I'm excited that we're looking at technology, because one of the things, if you're hurting for ridership, there are about 1.5 million people with disabilities in LA, and we're wanting to ride. The problem is, if you look at the bus, and compare the dimensions of the bus to the requirements of the ADA, the bus is a tunnel we could barely get through. So I think we're happy that the ramps are on buses, but we need to look at the buses and how to make more room. For example, it doesn't make sense that the chairs are very thick. If with technology, we can make chairs thinner, but stronger, so that everybody can ride. And the wheelchair spots are only 2. And dating is a problem for us, so that doesn't, make much sense. When we travel as a group. So imagine we have to cut our wait time. We have to double our wait time for the others because we can only go in pairs. So let's think big. Let's think changing the environment, and you will see that ridership go up. Yeah. I promise.
Awesome. Well, and I love these big ideas, extraordinary innovation, but I also love the fact that you can just make a small little change, and sometimes it can have a big ripple effect, right? Just a small little thing can change a whole heck of a lot. And I love this panel too, because I already saw cards being traded up here. So I'm guessing the conversation is going to continue after this. We're going to end this panel right now, try to make up some time. We have a 5-minute break to go to the restroom, to get some more coffee, all that stuff. We're going to start back here in 5 minutes. So thank you all. And we're going to be talking, the next panel is on community development, affordable housing, and access to housing, particularly near transit. Thank you all.